Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Alright, y'all, the spoilers for chapter 25 of the Boruto manga has finally been released, and I'm telling you guys right now, they are not playing. The big thing from this chapter is going to be Momoshiki's return to the Boruto manga. In my personal opinion, this right here is arguably one of the biggest updates of all time. This essentially came in the form of Boruto asking Momoshiki for his power. Now this right here in itself is surprising because we all understand that Boruto and Momoshiki, they are not on the best of terms. However, there is even a bigger twist. He even makes a deal with Momoshiki, and he tells Momoshiki, if you can actually defeat Jura, I'll give you my body. Now, power-wise, this kind of does make sense. One of the things that we've talked about for a very long time, especially since we've seen Boruto show up in chapter 1 when he absolutely obliterated Code, we thought if he even utilized his Karma Seal in battle, he'd be insanely powerful. So what better enemy to actually introduce Karma Seal Boruto against than a character like Jura? We already seen base Boruto go against Jura. It wasn't pretty at all. Jura essentially destroyed Boruto. And not only that, Kashin Koji basically let everybody know there is no possible way where Boruto can actually defeat Jura in a 1v1 battle. And this is coming from someone who already seen all the possible futures where, like, I guess a base Boruto would fight against Jura. Now Boruto is pretty much thinking to himself, it's not necessarily just the fact that he needs Momoshiki's power. It's not necessarily just that he needs the Karma Seal. I believe he's going for the true essence of the Karma Seal. He's going for the Karma Seal with the horn on top of his head. So it's not like we're going for a regular upgrade. The Boruto writers are trying to create a broken character. This is something that we haven't necessarily seen in a very long time. If you guys do recall, this is back when Boruto fought against Code, and of course Kawaki got his Karma Seal back. That right there, in my personal opinion, was one of the only times that we've seen an inkling of true essence Boruto, even though that wasn't really that. It wasn't really a true essence Boruto. The only reason why I say that is because not only did Boruto utilize the form with the horn on his head, but also when Momoshiki took over Boruto at that particular time, Boruto wasn't completely depleted of chakra. Most of the times when we see Momoshiki take over Boruto and they form that incredible BoruShiki duo, Boruto never really had any chakra, and it never really phased Momoshiki, honestly. If you guys recall, there was a time where he pretty much destroyed Boro. There's a time where he fought against Sasuke as well. Like, BoruShiki has been known to be an absolutely devious character while being completely injured, while being completely drained of chakra, and while being completely fatigued. Now, if they're going to form a duo, having full chakra, also with Boruto and Momoshiki working together, this could form a diabolical duo. And not only just a diabolical duo, it could form something that we haven't necessarily seen before. Boruto writers love doing this. They love to write themselves into like an open field of all possibilities. I don't think there's ever been a time period in the history of Otsuki human beings where they've worked together and collabed on a form. Now, just to put into perspective on how much I believe this actually does open the door to all the possibilities, I won't be surprised if Boruto gets a chakra mode from Momoshiki. All the things he didn't get from Momoshiki before are now back on the table. Like, hypothetically, he could get a Rinnegan in the next chapter. He could have the abilities that Momoshiki had where he could absorb juices and could throw back at you at like 50 times the strength. And honestly, I thought one of Momoshiki's most broken ability with it when it comes to the Rinnegan is that he could create chakra fruits by just absorbing chakra. He didn't necessarily absorb as much to make a flowered fruit, but he absorbed some during the tuning exams to where he could actually make chakra pills. I won't be surprised if my guy pops out looking like Tonetti in the next chapter. So when it comes to this potential new union, we understood taking that base and stacking Karma Seal on was going to be insane. Not only stacking Karma Seal, but now we're potentially stacking the true essence of the Karma Seal with the horn state on top of that. And not only that, you also potentially have a brand new form. Nah, this is wild. This is different. Now, the way it was propositioned in this chapter was a question. Now, Momoshiki didn't necessarily formally accept the offer. What I will say is, I believe it's likely that he will, simply because they set up in this particular chapter a lot of things to make us believe that Momoshiki was living in probably the worst possible state. So literally anything outside of what he's living in right now is going to be better. Specifically, what Momoshiki said was, he said that he wished he'd never even saved Boruto, and that in itself is a big statement because if you guys do recall, Boruto was Momoshiki's only vessel. At that particular time, hypothetically, if Boruto would die, Momoshiki would then disappear. But now Momoshiki is seeing disappearing as like being a vindication. It's like way better than what he's doing as of right now. So he believes death is way better than, I guess, what he feels is torture, just living inside the body of Boruto. He also said some very interesting things. He essentially talked about the fact that he couldn't necessarily take over Boruto's body or take over Boruto's mind anymore. I thought that was interesting because Boruto is still like deathly afraid of utilizing the Karma Seal. But regardless, this leads me to believe that Momoshiki is likely going to accept this offer. Now, here's the thing, and a lot of people might disagree with me in that I've had this stance for a very long time. I think eventually Boruto and Momoshiki are going to become friends. I think eventually they're going to form the Kurama and Naruto duo. Now, it's not necessarily going to be just like that, and I think the reason why it's not going to be just like that is because the Boruto writers understand it's going to be more and more backlash the more and more they make it just like Naruto and Kurama. We understand that, and not only that, they already have Kurama back into the series, forming a brand new bond with Himawari as well. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So a lot of those things are going to make them not want to necessarily do this, but hypothetically, if they do it, they're going to want to make it drastically different. Of course, I just brought up a potential chakra mode, but things like that might not necessarily happen just to give the duo a fresh perspective, and I completely understand that. But this, I ain't gonna lie, I've been saying this for a very long time. It just makes sense, in my personal opinion, because of the series of Boruto. I doubt we're actually going to see a future where Momoshiki fully takes over Boruto's body, but the big thing with Boruto being specifically, he needs a way to defeat Jura at this particular moment, and I think in the future it's probably going to be significantly helpful for someone like him. Significantly helpful. One of the things that I do want to know is, like, how would a character like Kawaki react to this news? Would Kawaki then start the beef again with Boruto? Like, he's collabing with the literal demons, so it's like, well, what are you doing, Boruto? And honestly, this, going back to the Kawaki thing, people might disagree with me, this kind of vindicates Kawaki with wanting to kill Boruto. It's like, you know, Boruto was like a ticking time bomb. At any moment, he could just pretty much revert back to Momoshiki, and now he's just willingly offering himself back to Momoshiki. I don't know, kind of sketchy. I also do want to bring up a possibility that Boruto is just flat out deceiving Momoshiki. He isn't necessarily fully going to give up his body to Momoshiki, and he's just lying to him at this particular point, just so they can actually defeat Jura. I think that's 100% a possibility. The only thing that I would say is it's not necessarily in Boruto's character to do something like that, but it wouldn't necessarily, like, make me mad. Like, if he were to just betray Momoshiki, like, I think that would honestly be a very smart thing to do. We could probably name multiple ninjas that are heavily respected in history that probably would pull a move like that. We'd all pretty much praise them for it. So one of the things that I also do want to see is, like, if hypothetically they do come up with this plan and they do agree to it, what will Kashin Koji see after that? One of the things that we kind of understand is that Kashin Koji isn't necessarily going to be privy to everything that Boruto does, because Boruto himself is a singularity. So Boruto himself can be taking steps to change the future, and what Kashin Koji did see. In the last chapter, Kashin Koji did get a bunch of updates because Boruto, again, took a bunch of steps that weren't necessarily in Kashin Koji's purview, again, because Boruto is a singularity. He essentially told Kawaki that he had limiters, and that in itself caused Kawaki to go press Amount to lift his limiters, and all of a sudden, Kawaki's showing onto the battlefield with his limiters off, and Kashin Koji never really seen it coming. I believe this right here is going to be a similar situation to that, but I want the update from Kashin Koji to come a lot earlier. I want Kashin Koji to actually see, would this duo make sense? And not only that, what would come of it? Like, what would be the end game? Hypothetically, if they do defeat Jura, is Momoshiki actually going to take over Boruto's body? Not only that, are there going to be future villains as well? One of the things that I think Boruto, and honestly, I think most shonen heroes kind of think like this, they believe the villain in front of them is the only villains. Hypothetically, he does defeat Jura. What's to say there won't be another Otsutsuki figure that pulls up that happens to be stronger than Ishiki Otsutsuki, that just happens to be stronger than Kawaki? I believe it wouldn't necessarily make sense for Boruto to just leave the planet undefended. Now, it's not necessarily undefended because there are crazy strong characters, but the more defense that Earth could potentially have would probably be the better, right? I don't know, but a couple of other things did happen in this chapter. I didn't necessarily make this for like a full spoiler review, but I'll probably talk about the chapter a little bit more, I guess. This particular chapter had a bunch of stuff. It had pretty much had Sarada confessing her love, or I guess her like, for Boruto. Also had finally Konohamaru doing something. Konohamaru finally being useful. He pretty much freed Moegi. You seen the shame in my guy's face. Like, he literally chose Matsuri over Moegi. Oh my days. This story, again, the video getting too long. I gotta end it. But that set me off, bruh. That, I couldn't believe it. Not only that, I guess Shinki came back as well. I thought that was elite. Gar, one of my favorite characters. A lot of you guys don't necessarily know. I pretty much named my channel after Gar. Bara. He pretty much came back alive. He wasn't necessarily dead, but he was sealed. He got unsealed, and now he's pretty much in not necessarily stable condition because he's still unconscious, but he's good, pretty much. He's good. He's gonna come back. We also got to see Himawari in Karma training. Himawari has a free training lesson. Like, literally every single day with Kurama. Like, Naruto didn't even get that. The past 2 chapters of Boruto has been absolutely insane. I know you guys know Kawaki's one of my favorite characters. He pretty much finally broke out of his shell, finally got his limits removed, and finally did something in Boruto TBV. And of course, coming back with this chapter, Momoshiki and Boruto potentially forming the most diabolical duo in Boruto history. This right here is fire. But let me know what you guys think. It's me, your boy Barbie, and we out.
It's a knife.